Hi, this is the Horror Academic, and I'm doing these kind of daily or semi-daily reviews as part of this kind of hashtag stay home kind of movement. So, figured I challenged myself to try and watch a movie a day, and I might as well review them while I'm watching. So, yesterday's movie was Dario Argento's Do You Like Hitchcock? So, I know this one's not a new one. This is like 2005. I recently finally got a copy on eBay pretty cheap, so I figured I'd check it out. It's pretty typical Argento fare, but no, this is when he was making TV movies for a little bit there, and I can't even say that it's more tame. It's just not as elaborate as his theatrical films. There was an awful lot of nudity, and I was like, well, maybe that's just because it's Italian TV, but I'm not sure if this is edited, or unedited, I should say, for DVD release, or if Italian TV just really doesn't care about anything, which is very possible, because it's mostly naked women, and it's Italy, so, yeah, my people, weird. So, basically, it's a pretty simple thriller, very in the giallo vein. One thing that I'll say is that they might as well have called it Do You Like Argento instead of Do You Like Hitchcock, because it has so many of his tropes as well as Hitchcock's tropes that it's could have gone either way. It's a story of a film student I believe he's studying in I think it's Milano, and he is doing his thesis on German Expressionism. So he's at the video store every day. Yeah, 2005. He's still going to video stores. So he's at the video store every day picking up a movie. And he's alone in his apartment except for occasional visits from his girlfriend or his mother. But very much like Hitchcock's Rear Window, much of his kind of free time is spent looking out the window and watching the neighbors. There's some nice little vignettes there. But in Hitchcock fashion, he sees a murder happen. Or he kind of sees a murder happen. People that he's been watching and he's seen turmoil with, a mother and daughter, something happens in the middle of the night. Very much in an Argento way, it's done by someone with gloves, and it's done kind of in POV, so we don't see the killer at all. And he hears a scream, wakes up. By the time he gets up out of bed and goes to see what's happening, the ambulances are already coming, and that's what really gets him. And he's mad at himself that he didn't get up the first time so he could have seen the killer for real. And it's kind of going through this whole story of these women that he's been watching, and he gets really infatuated with watching even before the murder. And, you know, he's got this bizarre obsession with these two women that he sees that also go to the video store. And the video store clerk, who's a little creepy at times, is part of that obsession. And, you know, in general, it's a whodunit kind of thriller. There's lots of Hitchcock more like scenario references than maybe scene references, so that there's constant talk about strangers on a train, Dial M for Murder, and of course, even though they don't mention it by name, Rear Window seems to be the main influence on this film. But I'm watching it seeing Bird with the Crystal Plumage, or Profondo Rosso, or any of the giallos that Argento did, which have very similar tropes in many ways, and we're seeing his visual style in certain ways also. I mean, very Hitchcock-like, most actions happen behind glass, so that we can see it like we're watching a screen, like we're watching a film frame. But, you know, as Argento does, you know, we see lots of first person, we see lots of gloved killers, and there's wigs that are trying to throw you off of what woman is committing what crimes, and a little bit of banter here and there that's kind of like this film student jargony. But I find it interesting that they chose for him to study expressionist films of Germany, because that meant that whenever he was watching a film and we saw it, it was public domain silent movies. And then he says it to his mother at the end after all of this. He's like, oh, I can't take this anymore, so I changed to Russian cinema. And of course he's talking about the Eisenstein kind of Russian theory of editing, which is also still old enough to be public domain, and he's watching Man with a Camera. So Yeah, they're trying to kind of like appeal to film fans, which I like, and I thought it was fine. And the kid, I mean, it starts off with him having this flashback to kind of being out in the woods and catching these two witches doing some sort of ritual, killing a chicken and being chased, and how this kind of like set his life kind of in motion. But I think they really miss an opportunity, because at the very end, he's after everything's happened, he has a broken leg at one point, so he's in his apartment that whole time watching so much like Rear Window, right? And then at the end, you see that he's exercising in his apartment. His cast is gone. He's healed up, and he hears something new. Some new person has moved into the apartment across the way where the killings happen. So he goes to look and see. And of course, it's a woman in a negligee lying around on a couch, and she even sees him watching and doesn't care. And he just has this moment of flashback, and you see all these images throughout the entire film of him watching. And I feel like they missed this perfect opportunity to end the film with him closing the blinds, which he doesn't do. He just kind of stands there, and you're like, okay, that was obviously what this was supposed to be right here. He closed the blind. But anyway, that was one part that kind of got me a little off. But there's so much in this film that is not only reference to Hitchcock, but Argento's work. I mean, he co-wrote it with someone who I feel probably took the reins and did most of the writing, and he added touches, maybe for the kills. Especially since it's TV, which isn't really his domain. I feel like him directing this film was almost like Steven Spielberg directing Ready Player One, where there was so much kind of homage to Steven Spielberg built into the book of Ready Player One. It was almost awkward that he was the one directing the film when it came out. It should have been someone younger who had this kind of reverence for Spielberg to appreciate that more. Same thing here. If someone who was an Argento fan, instead of actually Argento, directed this, maybe it would have been a little bit more stylized and taken advantage a little bit more of that. Where, like I said, you still have some stylized shots. There's still, there's a moment of it, someone dangling off a roof that could have gone either way, Hitchcock or Argento, the way it was shot. But it doesn't have that kind of over-the-top styling of dreamscapeness and color usage, all of those kind of nightmare elements that we expect of an Argento, because it is a thriller. It's not particularly actually a horror film. So, all in all that is to say, I did enjoy the movie. If anything, I was like, well, in America, this probably would have been edited for nudity and sexual content, not so much for blood, because there wasn't really much blood in it, to be honest. But I did like the twists and the little bits of the story, and it kept you guessing, and when you think you know who the killer is, of course, there's some little twist, and, there's all those things that make a thriller interesting. So, especially considering this was a television effort, I'm definitely going to give a thumbs up on Do You Like Hitchcock by Dario Argento, 2005, for Italian television. So, I have many, many films in my house. I'll show you some pictures here. And we are going to be staying at home for quite a while, it seems, with all this going on. So like I said, my challenge to myself is to try and watch a movie a day, see what happens with it, and try to report to you guys on what I'm watching and what I think about it. So if you're an Argento fan or a fan of thriller films, check out Do You Like Hitchcock, and check back here with the Horror Academic in a day or two, and I'll have another review. So keep staying inside, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.